Hello, Ben. So that is your studio, yes?
Yeah, so basically the main thing is let me let my dog out a minute.
All right. I
The most important factor, and well, the thing everyone overlooks is and what I had to do really was treat the room. So you
yeah.
can't see it. I've got all cloud traps on the ceiling, and it's not, you could see the foam there, but the foam is not the foam is just a deflector. Foam doesn't really sort of tend to work without any proper base trap. So I did all that. So that's GIK. So that's everywhere. I mean, that was extortionate how much money that cost. So I built everything on on vocals really.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
interesting. So I mean, I'm in my my shed. Like I said, my shed's in a different league. This is my shed. That's your studio. There's the difference in a nutshell. I've got some soundproofing stuff here, but it's interesting, isn't it? Particularly when you think about the lockdown side of things, that people kind of a lot of people, I suppose, not like yourself, like a professional, but I mean, a lot of people, a lot of musicians, they were kind of trapped at home and they started sort of thinking about getting their studios together. But do you have to spend, if you excuse the pun, a shed load of money to get it right?
on acoustic treatment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. See that foam like on its own does nothing.
Okay.
It literally does nothing. You literally wasting your entire time putting it up because it's just so thick because bass travels really a long distance. There's a lot of professional producers who argue that even the GIK stuff isn't, and that's probably the best you can get. I mean, so yeah, so each one of those panels is there costs 200 quid.
Wow.
You could do it yourself and probably
Mm.
save a lot of money before palaver. Um, so yeah, I mean, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plus 2 cloud traps. So you do the maths. It's
Yeah.
really expensive, but you can have the best kit. You can have so that microphone it's a really good Telefunken. It's one of it's not a cheap mic. So I think too many people look at shiny things and go, oh, hardware. And ultimately, you can have all the best hardware in the world, and if you haven't got the fundamentals right, then it sort of offsets it. There's not really much point, you know.
No, I mean, and my I call it my home studio. I don't know. My wife sometimes calls it my shed. So I mean, at the bottom of my garden, what the other side is where the garden tools are. And I'm in here in the freezing cold today, but
Yeah.
I've got a lovely tongue and groove ceiling, which probably doesn't do any harm. And I put some
No.
baffles in and this, that, and the other. And the rest of it, Ben, I've just done with stuff from the local dump shop, like a
Yeah.
horrible old settee, some stuffed pictures,
Yeah.
some rugs and curtains and stuff.
I mean, look, everyone calls it. I mean, this is a studio, but it's my personal studio. It's as professional as you're going to get. But look, it's not a commercial studio. I couldn't record drums or anything yet because
Yeah.
not many studios can because they're not geared towards drums. But I mean, yeah, I mean it's a home studio, but that's the beauty of of the way the industry is now with home recording gear. I mean, it's accessible to everyone, and so everyone can get it. So I mean, back when I first started, recording, you had to go to a commercial facility, because they were the only ones with an LH compressor or a Lexicon reverb. I mean, but that's all changed. And of course now with 500 series, with all 500 series hardware. I mean, I've got a 500 series rack in there with a Neve pre. Going into an Elysia compressor, going into a Trident ATB EQ, then into a de-esser. I mean, you couldn't. I mean, it's only about that big,
Yeah.
And that's my vocal chain.
Yeah.
So
talking about vocals, because I mean, obviously you're a singer songwriter, but you're also a vocal coach.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about tell us a bit about your vocal coaching actually, because you got your own company for that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, it's called Melody Matters. Yeah.
And when you say, I noticed you were talking about, I'm trying to think what you said, melody. I think melody was the thing that you focus on. Is that right? What's your kind of rationale and kind of, ethos towards coaching vocals?
To vocals, no, it's not melody. It's technique.
Okay.
So with vocals, how do I describe vocals? There's a misconception with vocals that there's up and down, high notes and low notes.
Yeah.
But the voice, it operates much the same way as a piano.
Okay.
So piano's like bass notes down there and high notes up there.
Yeah.
So when we talk about high and low, we're actually talking about pitch. We're not talking about space. So when people think high, they think high, and they think I've got to reach for those notes.
Yeah.
When people low, they go low the nose. So yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. So the vocal folds work on a back and forth sort of mechanism. So it's a bit early in the morning, but that's how it'll work. So it goes from it's like a balloon.
Okay.
Right? So yeah, and then it's about keeping the larynx low, or keeping the larynx low. What I coach is low larynx technique. So ultimately, what you want to do when you sing, is you want to keep your vocal your larynx in a neutral position. So if we set it back low, then the only place it can go is into a neutral position. So if we go for those, we go into the high pitches, we set the larynx low, then stretch the vocals back. So all we're doing is just using vowels.
Wow.
We're just using vowels and position. So so when people, what's happening when you're singing is that people think that singers are projecting their voices, but what's actually happening is they're hearing the residual effect of a good technique. So so projection and the sound is the last thing, but people always focus on that as being the first thing.
Yeah.
Technique is the first thing. The better the technique, the better the projection, the better the end product. We don't just have a guitar all of a sudden just comes out of a factory. There's a procedure, there's a design element, there's a process. So there's the factory floor. So if the factory floor is shit, and if the manufacturing process is shit, the end product's going to be shit.
Like cheap multiply produced guitars, I suppose.
Yeah, it's exactly the same with the voice. If you overlook the manufacturing process, which is the larynx and what's going on here, then the end product, i.e., the sound, is going to be shit.
That's really interesting. I've sung in bands for a long time, right? So I still sing in bands now.
Yeah,
but I've never ever thought about that. But I'm sure it's really interesting. What about the warm-up routines? How much of you an advocate for warm-up routines before gigs for vocals?
You have to do them. I mean, but the problem is whether you know how to. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the problem you've got now is Google and the internet, and especially YouTube.
Yeah.
The problem with all them, I mean, I teach people lip trills, and you see lip trills all over YouTube, and 99.9% of the people doing lip trills on YouTube is wrong. And and so there's no context to it. The problem with vocalists is we've all got the same apparatus, but we're all vastly different in terms of the way the apparatus is situated, the way, the type of voice, the type of resonance. We're an organic instrument.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you need, a lot of singers wonder why they sound great on Saturday and then or great on Wednesday in practice, and they sound shit on Saturday. It's like, because they've got no technique, they've got nothing to hold on to. They've got no reason to know why they were sounding good. If they were doing something they right on Wednesday, they don't know why or how they were doing it right. So they can't replicate it on Saturday. What my focus is to get a solid technique.
Yeah.
So they've got something to lean on and something to go back to and go, I just need to do this.
So that's interesting. Again, a couple of things with that. Firstly, I've played golf for years. I'm not very good at golf either, but I played golf for years, right? And every now and again, I meet up with a guy who happens to be a pro. Maybe I'm walking around his golf course or something, and he tells me a couple of tips, and all of a sudden I'm hitting the ball like Seve Ballesteros, but it just doesn't last,
Yeah.
I suppose it's that essential kind of theoretical and practical kind of knowledge, I suppose, that works also with the voice. If you can retain those techniques, you're halfway there. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's that big P word, that practice word, isn't it? I mean, what we do is we don't practice things until we get them right. We practice until we can't get them wrong.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's my
Yeah.
mantra, and I use on all my clients. And
Mm.
so you know, you'll be as good as, I mean, the client does all the heavy lifting. I just teach him the technique, and then so it's exactly the same with golf. I mean, you could see a golf pro, you pay him 50 quid an hour, then you've got to do all you've got to work out how to translate what he's taught you and incorporate it into your own game. And it's exactly the same with singing, you know. So you've got to take on board what it is I'm telling you, where you're going wrong, and where you're going right, and capitalize on it, you know, and just keep on, keeping on.
The
You
other
know,
thing you said, which really interested me there, Ben, was you said about the voice being an organic instrument. Now, I wonder what you think about this. So, when I've been in studios recording stuff, and it could be a guitarist, without giving any names. A guitarist could say to me, "Oh, you know, they could like sit in when I'm doing the vocal." Now, I find when I'm doing the vocal, I'm just might be just me, but I got like a guy I always like to work with, and maybe sometimes I work well with the producer, sometimes I don't. You kind of need a bit of a kind of a trust thing between yourself and the producer in order to be able to have that creative space. Because as you said, the vocal, what I try to explain to other musicians is the vocal comes out of my head. It's not a piece of wood. It's not a piece of string. You
oh, yeah.
know, it has an emotional context to it. And it's kind of a different game, don't you think? Getting the vocals right as opposed to other instruments, would you say, or
It's the
not?
hardest instrument to play, and I'm a musician. And I mean, if people come to me and say, you know, I want about 5 or 6 lessons, it's like, well, God, don't come to me. It's like, you know, I'd say, you know, if you want to learn, it's like going to a guitar teacher saying, I want to play the guitar after 6 lessons. It's like, it's an ongoing process. As far as how difficult it is, and I say to this, you know, if you want to master singing, and you're getting frustrated with it, you know,
Hmm.
you'd be better off just trying to be a concert pianist or something, because it's easier. It's
Yeah.
easier because it's
Wow.
more tangible. Where you
Yeah.
know you could see what you're doing wrong with the vocals. We're literally controlling an instrument we can't see, can't feel, can't touch,
Mm.
and we've got to control it all with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yes.
so ultimately, what we do is you know, it's by far the easiest thing to learn. Hardest thing to learn. It's by far the easiest thing to get wrong.
Yeah.
And it's because it's literally the problem you've got with vocals is people think that the notes exist before. So that's the problem with reaching for notes and trying to hit notes. Terrible terminology.
Hmm.
Up and down, and you probably hear chest voice, mixed voice, and head voice.
I haven't
That
actually. No, I
Yeah,
haven't
well, that's
actually.
sort of like that's
Okay.
coached all over the world, you know.
Okay.
And I was coached that back in the day, and still coached now. But the problem with stuff like that, it insinuates position in terms of up and down,
I've heard
heads
about the
up.
diaphragm stuff, I suppose. That's the bit I've heard about.
Well, the diaphragm is the deal. Singing from your diaphragm stuff is bollocks, because it's not true. I mean, what happens is you breathe from your diaphragm. You lock in. Okay, so the diaphragm is your support, but then is your breath support. But then the main support then is the larynx, is
Okay.
the vocal folds, is keeping it in a low position, and being able to, because we got two muscles, the thyroid muscle and the cricothyroid muscle. So the the thyroid muscle is what we've got our vocal folds attached to constantly. The way we're talking now, you don't even think about you know, your voice when you
No,
speak, and you just talk.
exactly. No.
So that's how I train people, because what we want to do is to bring the cricothyroid muscle into play. We want to get this. So the cricothyroid muscle is, we've got 2 states of vocals: connected and disconnected. So falsetto, total disconnect. Okay, but what most people do is they go ma 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 ma. So you got that little flip in the middle.
See, I'd never heard of any of that stuff. I suppose most people wouldn't, and I
No,
didn't realize that. You know, if I think about music, I mean, the thing I like about music is, I suppose like was, but like the creativity of it. And for me, it's like I don't see it as a scientific domain, but there is a scientific obviously aspect to it, isn't it?
Well, the creative thing comes last. I mean, I have people that come to me and say, oh, I want to sing this certain way, sing that certain way. It's like, well, forget about. It's like me going to a guitarist, a guitar teacher, and I can't play, and saying I want to learn jazz guitar. And he'd just be like, fuck off, mate. He'd just be like, learn normal guitar first, like everyone else,
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah, look, I mean, some people are naturally good at it. I was naturally good at singing, but then I had a terrible technique, and then my voice just went pop in New York.
Okay.
And then I was almost going to pack singing in, because is my mic better, by the way?
Yeah. What happened? Yeah, you can hear you fine now. What happened in New York? You out there touring or something?
Yeah, and I was in. Funny enough, I was singing a song called "Don't Worry," which I've just recently recorded.
Okay.
And it's called "Don't Worry," and I used to worry about it all the time. And my voice went, and I said to the label, I said, I'm fed up a bit. I've been to see loads of different vocal coaches, and everyone was telling me conflicting things. And then I sort of stopped singing for about, God, must have been about a year. I was just like, I didn't sing a note for about a year. Just like, was scared to sing. My voice was just didn't know why my voice was good some days and why it was bad. But then at that time, it was always bad. It just really, a real terrible technique. So I found a really good vocal coach who taught a technique called speech level singing. And it was it took me a while to work out what it was all about, and then all of a sudden it sort of clicked, and I got it, and after about 2 years, and then I've just been on that, and that's about 15, 16 years ago, and I've just been on that quest ever since, and I'm just constantly learning about it. I'm just like a voice geek. So yeah, I mean, so for me, with regards to learning the technique first, that's way more important, than I mean, look, if you've got I mean, it's all very good having like artistic ideas, but if you can't pull them off because you've got no technique, then it's sort of like no point.
Yeah,
it's like having really good golf clubs, but just can't hit the ball.
Well, it's the same. We come back to the golf analogy. I keep on missing the short putts. So someone might tell me, "No, Steve, you've got to have your hands like this, right?" And then I've got to relearn. I've got to relearn psychologically and physically that position and become comfortable. And it sounds like it's exactly the same with vocals.
Well, as you play guitar. It's this whole game with whatever you play is all about repetition.
Yeah.
And repetition. Again, don't practice until you get it right. Practice it until you can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
You go from when you go from a B to like an A5, you couldn't do it. So you just if say you've got a G, C, B, A5, or G, or C, B, A5, G, you can go from the G to the D, but you've just got to keep practicing that B to that A5 because you're not very good at it. Yeah. So it's exactly the same with singing. We focus on the area in which what the problem is, and we get you into that place that you don't like, so it becomes the place that you do like.
So a friend of mine he flew home yesterday. He's come up from Bali for a while, and he's been like a lot of people, he wants to sing, so he's been taking vocal lessons. People love singing, but it's something, Ben, I suppose that it's one of those annoying things that everyone takes it for granted, don't they? They don't, don't they? People, like anyone can sing. You're singing in your car or whatever, you're singing in your bath or whatever. Like anyone can sing. But I've learned loads just from hearing you saying that. If you want to do it properly, you've got to learn, haven't you?
Oh yeah, anyone could sing, but not everyone could sing properly. The problem is that when people, if you don't know about people, about singing, people get impressed with sort of like, oh, look at the way she's hitting those high notes. Look at the way he's hitting how low he can go. I'm not interested in the high and the low. I'm interested in the ones in the middle, because they're the most difficult, because they're the ones we don't use. When most people are singing in the car, they're singing in falsetto like that. When most people sing, because it's the easiest form of singing, because there's no tension there. The vocal folds are open and everything's going through. or they could sing down here. It's the when you're singing there at that part. Okay, because what we're actually doing is mixing the cricothyroid and thorietinoid together.
Wow.
And that's the point that usually most people don't use because they don't have to. Okay,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, you know, but when we sing professionally, that's the area you want to be.
So you've got a lot of clients with this now. Are any of them sort of, you know, sort of touring professional sort of thing? Is that the kind of people you deal with, or is it? Yeah, okay.
Most of them. I mean,
when it really matters, I suppose.
A lot of my clients are America.
Yeah.
I teach people from all over Europe. I've got 2 Welsh people. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't teach anyone from. I got one from.
Well,
London,
we can all sing in Wales, can't we? You know.
Apparently. So I've got one from. I got a couple of guys from London. I got a guy from Scotland. Got a guy from up north. But majority of them are American guys. You know, touring artists, people with vocal problems, people that have picked up bad habits, and you know, I'm starting to get a fairly decent reputation now, and I don't advertise or anything, you know, so it's which is good. I mean, once you start getting a bit of a name for yourself, people say, you know, try out this guy. Yeah. And I'm often known as sort of like the last resort. People have gone to these coaches and you know, had all these conflicting, because you know, people, the problem is vocal coaching, it's not regulated. You know, and you know, anyone can be a vocal coach, and you can teach any manner of bollocks. Okay, and a lot of these vocal coaches sort of try and make it more sort of spiritual and more complicated than it actually is, to sort of make it as almost like it's a dark art. But the bottom line is, you know, I've worked under, you know, some of the best coaches in the world. I've worked under Lynn Hilton, worked under Josh Alamu, and you know, we've all moved away now into the science-led sort of coaching. So we've taken all the hocus pocus out of it and just literally gone, well, this is the anatomy, because you know, everyone's still steeped in this thing of chest voice, mixed voice, and head voice. But if you went to an ENT surgeon and said, "Oh, I'm having a problem with my chest voice or my head voice," he'd look like you were nuts. He'd be like, "What are you talking about?" Because there's no such thing. It's just the thing that us singing coaches have made up to sort of give some context, you know.